Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wise the Dome TV. Today, is a very special guest, man. One that a lot of y'all have been waiting for part two. Dr. Miron Gilmore, first Black philosopher to earn a doctorate in Africana philosophy and Black male studies at University of Edinburgh, also professor at Purdue. Overall, brilliant brother, someone who does what he does like truly for the love of it, and so it's always an honor and a pleasure to get to build with my brother. So appreciate you for coming through, G.
Hey man, the pleasure is mine, man.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's get into it, man. All right, so I was reading obviously your essay, Killology, and I'm still reading it at the moment, but it's the reason why it's taking me so long because it's heavy, man. I gotta take a lot of notes and just like it's a great essay. But anyway, in your analysis, like you kind of build on this in the beginning of the essay, about the eradication of Black studies and the Black arts and Black power movement and how it impacted the Black thought within the trajectory of Black thought within an Africana studies disciplinary framework. So like many people may not even understand that there is an issue with Black studies at the moment, right? I think it's an idea and a topic that unless you are faculty somewhere or a philosopher as such as yourself, may not be totally aware that this is even a thing, right? But if you can you speak about that, the eradication of Black studies and Black arts and the Black power movements, how it happened, and where it kind of led Black thought to in this present day?
Yeah, man. Black studies was really an organic effort from Black students and the Black student movement, particularly in the San Francisco state, by Black Panther Party members and a host of people who are identified as Black cultural nationalists. The real ideological foundation of Black studies came from that Black arts movement that had cultural nationalists like Amiri Baraka and Karenga and Harold Cruz, right? And these are the ideas that's kind of transmitted in the early Black studies programs. But I think when you look at Black studies, the best way to understand Black studies is that Black studies is actually a response to a social movement,
Mm.
right? The narrative is usually that Black power created Black studies. No, the
Hmm.
institutions allowed the creation of Black studies to get people out of the streets,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And they did this through a coordinated plan. They literally used counterinsurgency tactics explicitly.
Mm.
Not only institutions and universities and presidents, but the Ford Foundation and these philanthropic institutions who allow Black studies to persist beyond the 80s and 90s. They intentionally funded the Black studies programs that were less nationalist,
Mm.
the proposals that are more integrationist.
Mm.
So when you're looking at Black studies, you're looking at a bureaucratic response to what was an insurgency, what
Wow.
was a radical social movement.
Wow. It's very interesting that you spoke on white philanthropy and their influence on Black male studies programs moving forward, because that was the beginning of Black education post emancipation, in the first place, from Peabody and Rockefeller, and hey, we're going to push this industrial idea of education on Black people to keep them, at the lowest position on the social hierarchy. And
Right.
it seems that even though it's a tad bit different, it's still more of the same. White philanthropy directing how we choose to go about our own education, which should, in most cases, create an agency within the people, right? But whenever it's being directed, it's like, I mean, isn't that a form of social engineering?
I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you look at the same moment that Black Power was born, There's a great essay by Harold Cruz he gave at Yale
Hmm.
about integrationist ethic.
Hmm.
In the crowd is the president of the Ford Foundation.
Wow.
They're on the scene, right? Because you got to remember what's happening to get these Black Studies programs. It's riots in every major city in 64, 65, 66, right? It's Black Panther Party members fresh out of the military. They join the party, they go to San Francisco State. Man, they setting off bombs on campus.
Mm.
You got to stop this shit.
Hmm.
They want Nathan Hare. They want Nathan Hare to be the head of the Black Studies Department.
Mm.
Right. So how does the university respond? They purge the radicals and they'll give you a department, right? But it's not going to be exactly what you asked.
Mm.
Right. It's
Mm.
going to be configured in a way where it's multiculturalism. It's not nationalism no more.
Right. Right. And it's interesting because I see a lot of these books that come from these Black Studies departments and university presses, and they'll 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 attempt to frame Black radicals of the past in a new quote unquote Black Lives Matter lens, and it comes off extremely weird. There's nothing that feels radical about it at all. And is that something that you've noticed a lot with a lot of the new work that's coming out?
Man, look, I think it's as early as the 80s, right?
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
at the same time that Black studies is being institutionalized, there's a great book on this called From Black Power to Black Studies by Fabio Rojas.
Okay.
He'll show you this development. By
Hmm.
the time it becomes a concrete discipline, he lists the top 20 books in Black studies. They're all Black feminist books.
Wow. Hmm.
They're all about gender,
Hmm.
right? And then then one of the classes I was teaching, man, I had students look this up. The Black Scholar Journal was a journal that Daruba bin Wahad has published in about COINTELPRO. Robert Williams has called for guerrilla warfare in this journal in the
Hmm.
70s. Their homepage right now is on BDSM.
What?
The Black Scholar Journal is writing about that's what it's about now. It's about sex, personal experience, and gender.
Mm.
That's Black studies now, you know.
Wow. And so Sylvia Wynter mentioned, because you did, like, in the first question, we went over like the Black arts movement and the idea of Black cultural nationalism and Black aesthetic. Um, Sylvia Wynter mentioned Amiri Baraka's shift from Black Power nationalism to the Maoist wing of Marxism Leninism. How did Baraka's defection influence the direction of Black thought, and what were the implications did it have for broader movements, in your opinion?
Yeah, man. I think Baraka's an interesting figure, man, because when you read the Black Panther Party and they're talking about pork chop nationalists,
Hmm.
they're talking about Baraka.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
what they're talking about,
Hmm.
And a lot of the debates they end up having, it seems to be like a false dichotomy because
Hmm.
by 1974, Baraka says that the most important thing that the Black Panther Party contributed was this ideology based on Marxism Leninism. But I think that shift that Winter talks about, it really is spurred and caused by the failure of the Kawada houses. So Baraka he's really a good institution builder.
Hmm.
He emerged as a leader at the National Black Political Convention in 1972, but he created this organization called I think it's called the Committee for Newark,
Hmm.
and a community action program. And so he helps get the first Black mayor actually elected
Hmm.
in Newark.
Wow.
And he has no class analysis at this time, though.
Hmm.
He just say, hey, all Black people are the same. So you get the Black mayor, and so they want to open up these houses. They want to have communal style, African style housing that's free stuff in it, real socialistic. The Black mayor completely blows them off. right? So he helps this guy become the mayor, and then he throws him to the wayside. The Kawada houses go up in flames, and then Baraka's in this kind of crisis.
Mm,
He makes this ideological shift. And I think, you know, the problems with Marxism, Leninism that Winter is pointing us to, it really stems from the fact that it's a European theory, right? I mean, outside of the Panthers really being using a lot of ingenuity to mold it and fit it to the Black experience,
hmm.
man, Marxism, Leninism is a this is something that's born of the Soviet Union.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Even the
Hmm.
third world is alien to Marxism, Leninism until the Cuban Revolution.
Mm,
It's not applicable. Marxist dialectics are not applicable to the third world because they're non-developed,
right.
right? So
Right.
it really has that that baggage that comes along with it. And I
Hmm.
think she's really attentive to how, you know, the poetry, because remember, all these are influence each other. The Black
Hmm.
arts movement influenced the Black student movement. Black students movement influenced the Black writing and Black aesthetic, and that dynamic between the three, it's gone at
Yeah.
that point. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and it's I think it's extremely observant for her to even see that and make that connection, right? Because um it goes to the idea that we were talking about earlier of whenever we study these ideologies and these theories and these philosophies, um nowadays in 2024, it's only and I'm not, and this, and I'm not saying this from any type of like a elitist point of view or idea, but I'm really saying that it's not prevalent because it's purposely, obviously, you know, it's purposely done in order to lead us in a different direction, um, academically, and in a manner of philosophy, um, and so the more that I begin to learn about a lot of these different things, these ideological shifts, these theories, man, yo, the this system is diabolical, bro.
yeah, yeah,
It's like it's extremely diabolical, and just the idea that, you know, because you know, you can think, I mean, it's easy to see things occur historically and in the present, and we think they just happen out of nowhere. They happen by chance when these things are being directed. You know what I mean? I mean,
right.
that's just that's a cold idea to think about, bro.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, and with Winter, like she's so observant of it. She even sees some of these flaws in the thinking of a Huey Newton,
Mm,
right? That he's so committed to materialism,
hmm.
right? That's a product of Western rational thinking.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right now, that doesn't mean he's not able to do interesting things with it.
Yeah.
Right? In her own mind, she's very observant of, hey, you know, there's consequences to adapting
Mm,
particular ideologies, right? And the way she's been able to really grasp that, I don't think a lot of Black philosophers or thinkers or scholars have really been able to reckon with the pitfalls or the benefits that came from trying to adapt Marxism Leninism.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Absolutely. What, you know, like I know, like, and you mentioned it in your essay that we're building on, and you cited her obviously, and you said that she mentioned class fracturing and the emergence of Black feminist thought was one of the things that uh, I guess contributed to this ideological shift. Could you kind of go into the other two and how they played a factor in this ideological shift that we're speaking about?
yeah, man. Yeah. So, you know, at this, the thing about Black nationalism in the 60s is that for the first time, you have the Black bourgeois and the Black underclass unified ideologically,
Mm,
right? These riots unify people across class boundaries. And Malcolm is important with that before he dies.
hmm.
He's able to talk to street guys and intellectuals,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And what happens is, was Black studies is institutionalized, and taken another direction, the black underclass is widened.
Mm,
So, and this is really Winter's reading of Robert Allen.
hmm
Robert Allen gives a really, really good account of how people like the Ford Foundation, these philanthropic institutions, they see, hey, there's a black middle class here. So if we can give them politicians, if we can give them the Congressional Black Caucus, a black mayor, black
hmm
police officer, black
hmm
police chief, we can give them black capitalism, right? And make a professional class. But the underclass actually got worse, right?
hmm hmm
And with them getting worse, to make sure these people don't riot, what happens? We get the emergence of what we call now the mass incarceration nation,
Right,
right? So
right.
that's tied, that's the kind of class dynamic, that she brings up. But the other thing that scholars are very hesitant to mention in Winter is that she says the black feminist criticism
Mm,
is part of this, right?
right,
And
right.
the reason why is important
hmm
because when you read Winter's history, she's very inspired by black nationalists,
hmm
and she's aware that there's a strain of black nationalism that can be misogynistic.
hmm
She doesn't want to deny that.
hmm
She says the black feminists are a problem because they don't distinguish between those elements and the elements where men and women are complementary.
mm,
She did not, black feminism denies that black nationalism can be in favor of black men and women as a community.
right,
It
right, right.
denies the capacity. It denies the dynamic force to it. And she says that's why it's a problem.
And that's very interesting that you speak of it because you think like uh, it would just be about um, you know, uh, I guess any type, some type of equality and equity within Black women, but it's a whole different side to it that is actually because I saw something that you you talked about earlier today, and it's kind of blew my mind about Bell Hook's critique on George Jackson.
Right.
And I mean, for those who don't know, can you tell everybody what that critique was?
Yeah, no, she says George Jackson, by engaging in revolutionary guerrilla warfare against the white state, was actually mimicking and supporting white supremacist capitalist patriarchy.
How did she come to that conclusion?
Because this is the black feminist critique, right? That black masculinity and black manhood is seeking to accomplish what white men have.
Mm,
Say
hmm
they want to get rid of it, but really they just want to be the master,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
hmm
And so that kind of idea is at the basis of this critique that black men really don't have an original vision of freedom. They just want to be white men and have sexual access to white women and be the ones who are able to impose violence without accountability.
mm,
Right? Bell Hooks is really a figure who takes that into the new millennium, into the 2000s. So yeah, that's where that's coming from, and that's
hmm
and that's what Winter is heskint to. She's
hmm
like, maybe there are some black nationalists who are misogynistic, right? But the entire framework, it doesn't have that there, right?
hmm
There's egalitarianism here that
hmm
they just deny.
Right, right. Wow, that's cool. In the context of the genocide in Gaza, I'm being careful with certain words that I use because of they like the shadow ban when it
Right,
if you mention certain things, right?
right,
But
right,
but when we in the context of that, there were claims that um, the men who were the actual victims of the genocide, obviously it's men, women, and children, but the men of the group that are the victims of the genocide are being portrayed as people that are harming women and children, are wording women, right? Um, and a tactic used to demonize them, right? And I guess to uh, and so once a group is demonized, then they attempt to gain support in the public for this genocide. Oh well, look at them. They're R worders. They're attacking the women and children, and so but this is also a similar tactic that is used against black men, right? And then, would this fall under the concept of phallicism? And additionally, for those who may not have ever heard of the term, can you define phallicism and discuss its implications?
Yeah, man. I think that's a good, the what's happening in Gaza is a good frame of reference. Because phallicism is the guiding theory of the paradigm of Black male studies, and Tommy Curry really wants to try to articulate two different types of phenomena. So on the one hand, you have this dynamic we was talking about, the construction of a threat, right?
Hmm.
And this construction of this threat, or this imaginary, this conjuring of a threat, these groups of men, particularly racialized men, they're not only killers, but they're rapists, right?
Mm.
They assault people.
Hmm.
But this type of dehumanization allows them not only to just be killed, but themselves, they are also sexually assaulted by the men and women of the group demonizing them,
Mm. Wow.
right? That's
Wow.
an implication of phallicism that you're able to see the rape of black men during slavery by men and women,
Hmm.
right? The rape of black men during Jim Crow, the
Hmm.
sexual violation of black men's bodies. They don't just get lynched, they got to castrate them first,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But the other aspect of phallicism is what's really powerful, and it's one of my favorite aspects of it. Once these groups are dehumanized, to impose violence on them is understood as in protection of women, children, and civil society.
Wow.
Right? This is a good thing for democracy for these people to die.
Wow. Right.
Right? And it's like that. It's just the same way the criminal thing works with black men, right? Don't you want criminals in jail?
Hmm.
You don't want, nobody wants criminals harming people, right?
Right.
If you want to have a stable society, we got to throw criminals in jail.
Mm. That's like how when the Black Caucus was okaying that those all those crime bills that ended up incarcerating
Right.
our uh brothers in our community. It's like,
Right. They're super predators.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's and,
That's a
and so,
good thing. Yeah.
does this kind of that demonization, does that kind of connect to the idea of no humans involved?
It does, man. It really does. I think Curry is really indebted to Winter's analysis on that, because what she's showing you is that there's certain logics, or there's an epistemology to this, right? Our entire knowledge systems and as a civilization justify this.
Hmm.
Certain groups of people are less human than others.
Mm.
And because of that, they're outside of the moral boundaries of identification that we have with other people,
Hmm.
full humans, right? But what's really good about phallicism is that it shows you how they not just killed. We see it with police officers all the time. They sexually violate you.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Hmm.
fill you up first,
Hmm.
right? There's a homoeroticism to it.
Hmm.
Even the men who are supposed to just not just agents of death, they
Hmm.
want to rape black men too.
Right, right,
Right?
right,
The,
right. It's
the men and women of the dominant group, when you're in jail, the white
mhm.
women are like, they can tell you to strip.
Right, right,
Sexual.
right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Hmm.
That's
Spread your
where Curry
cheeks.
really, right.
Yeah.
That's very sexual.
Hmm.
Even George Jackson and Soledad Brother, right?
Hmm.
Constantly being stripped, constantly being, invaded, no privacy. You know what I mean? So I think that's where phallicism is really, pushing forward. It's not just death. It's not just genocide, but it's also the rape of men.
Hold on one second.
No proud.
Nah, man. Yeah, that's I don't know. It's a that's a cold idea, man, because not only like it's like the people that they're accusing of being these predators are actually being victimized by the real predator.
Right.
And but how the all right, so what are your thoughts on this though? Because so many people in the public eye, whether it's even in our own people, like I gave the now the idea of when the black Joe Biden and the Black Caucus. They were, oh yeah, we need to lock these criminals up, right? Like, but what is the idea of how easy it seems to be for people to fall for this idea that, the people who are being victimized, no, well, the people who are being victimized are really the predators, right? Like, how does that go? How do they create this imagery and idea where people actually buy into it?
Yeah, I think that's the power. That's the power of rationalization, and I think that's where Winter comes in, right? Like the epistemology, how we know the world, is structured and informed by a particular view of the social hierarchy
Mm,
and the
mm,
moral valuation of particular types of people.
mm-hmm,
And if we accept, which we all implicitly do, that Western American civilization is the highest stage of development, right?
mm-hmm.
Then it stands to reason that these people who can't fit into it need to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're a threat to that. You know what
right,
I mean?
right. And it is, but yeah. I just sometimes I I'm amazed at how our own people can get indoctrinated with that idea and then perpetuate that idea on, and like, so like whenever Winters talks about no humans involved, why does she mention the idea of I might be using the wrong word, but of jobless or not like what part of that, like what is that aspect of her analysis?
That's the internal colonialism, right?
Mm-hmm,
Right. Remember, all of this gets uh, centered on this new black underclass.
mm,
The nature of the capitalist economy is that there is not enough jobs for everybody.
mm-hmm,
Somebody got to be unemployed,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? And when they were unemployed in the black ghettos, they started to riot.
mm,
See what I mean? The
mm-hmm,
young, jobless black men were the primary agents of the ghetto riots of the 60s. So they become the targets for repression when you're trying to stop this insurgent movement, right? So
right.
what she's showing you is that not only do they put in a black middle class that can help this sustain itself,
Mm-hmm,
but they kind of consolidate all of the violence on a particular group,
mm,
right? She calls them the liminal category. This is the category that all of our positive truth, just like a truth requires the contrast of a falsity.
mm-hmm,
If
mm-hmm,
whiteness is the truth, the young black male is falsehood.
mm,
One, the sun needs the dark,
right, right.
right? And they're complementary.
And she said that position is fixed.
It's fixed, right?
Yeah.
And our knowledge systems maintain it.
Mm, wow. Wow. Um, it's funny, like uh, even like so yesterday I saw a guy someone who is a online influencer. I mean, he says he's down for the cause, but he was talking that we are not our ancestors stuff, right? And I
Yeah,
started laughing, right? I hate that kind of talk, but me and you, when we were building on the phone the other day, we actually touched on that and the fearlessness exhibited by our people during the Black Power movement, such as the Panthers going to the California State Capitol armed, to individuals at Cornell going with straps to get an Africana Studies program created, which is also something that a lot of people don't even know. Like that's not taught in mainstream Black history, right?
right, right,
And then efforts to free Assata Shakur. Like when you think about it, like that's almost like a kamikaze mission, right? You know what I'm saying?
right.
Like the amount of fearlessness and love that you have for your people. And so whenever you hear those type of things, like what goes through your mind about our people during that period?
Yeah, man. I think just like you was talking about the Panthers, man, like just the way they thought about self-defense, like that's the first time in Black history outside in North America, outside of Nat Turner,
Mm,
that self-defense is a concept that includes offensive violence.
mm,
To the Panther Party, this is why the Deacons for Self-Defense said they was crazy. right? Because they said we're not waiting for the police
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see us.
we popping it off.
We're gonna trail them
Yeah,
and we're gonna get it cracking.
yeah.
And that's self-defense because we're an occupied nation. It
Mm,
logically follows from
mm-hmm,
internal colonialism
mm-hmm.
analysis, right?
Absolutely. Hmm.
You don't, man, we don't even talk about self-defense anymore.
No, not
That's
at
played
all.
out. That's
Right.
played out, you know.
That's crazy. Like when you think we don't like it's that is nothing that is discussed. As
I mean, we didn't have white mass shooters go shoot black women and children,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
We didn't have white shooters go in the place where Denmark Vesey planned his
mm-hmm.
slave rebellion and kill black people.
Yep,
We don't even talk about defense for that, let
yep.
alone offensive structures.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's not even on the table, man.
Right, 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 right. That's yeah, that's
That's black identity extremism. You know what I mean?
yeah, facts, facts.
There's no even vocabulary for something like that.
Right, right. And so when people write about this intellectually, academically, how is it received by people within the Africana studies paradigm now?
Played out,
Mm,
antiquated, right?
mm,
All black studies is black feminism, right?
mm,
That's what it is.
mm,
And if it's not that, then it's not genuine black studies.
mm. Wow.
That's the common knowledge. That's what we are. You know what I mean?
And so that type of self-defense, right? Because it is violent, is seen as uh black men attempting to be like white patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Wow.
To mimic the white man, right?
Mm. So how else would we get out of this system? Vote.
Uh, they don't really have a lot of
Solutions.
solutions. I mean, Bell Hooks in one of her earlier works, she said the patriarchal system is set up in America to put black women on the bottom, black men above them, white women and white men, and to overturn that system, black women should start having sex with white men. That's what she said, and
Really?
that'll overturn the system.
Wow.
I don't know how. I don't know any group of people that got freed by their women
Right.
procreating with the opposite group,
Yeah.
but that's what she said. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So,
Wow.
I mean, that's where we are. You know.
You mentioned intercolonialism, and so when Huey began, so did Huey, and I know you've like Revolutionary Suicide is one of your favorite books. Um, his his theory of before we even go into what the theory of intercommunalism is, did his theory like evolve from having an idea of intercolonialism to intercommunalism? Is that what happened?
Right.
Okay. Well,
Right.
when do you think he kind of started evolving that theory?
So you got to remember something about Huey. Huey teaches himself how to read by reading Plato's Republic,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees himself as very akin to Malcolm. So Malcolm is characterized by always changing and open to new information,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this was Lee's theory. Huey Newton to adopt the theory of dialectical materialism,
Right.
because dialectics is supposed to put you in touch with the constant changing state of nature,
Mm-hmm.
constant changing state of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1966, the party starts off as a separatist
Mm-hmm.
black nationalist movement, classical separatism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then they update that a year later. They call themselves revolutionary internationalists,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then they call themselves socialists,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then they go from socialist to intercommunalist.
Right.
And
Right.
intercommunalism is not his last stop.
Mm.
He in my dissertation, I put it. It's an 8-part framework of Huey Newton's thought. He constantly is changing. But by the time he dies, he's organizing with the Uhuru movement and
Mm-hmm.
Black socialism again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, he really sees himself as always trying to keep in touch with things. But I would say it's right there from the beginning. right? They start off as nationalists, but they don't want to be static
hmm
and want to contribute something original.
hmm Right, right. And but before we get into the communalism question, I kind of want to throw this one out there because I think it kind of fits with what we were just building on. Um, when a lot of leftists, um, both white and black, often, but mostly, I would say both white and black, but I've really seen it mostly with white leftists. Um, but this idea and this disdain for Marcus Garvey, right? And they'll hold up Fred Hampton, Huey,
Right.
and then, Garvey was, the way he, maneuvered through this capitalist system and his ideas of, African nationalism and these things like this, like they are totally opposed to that, as if. But you brought up something that was extremely interesting. Huey said that he was in the lineage of Malcolm and Garvey, correct? And if you can speak on that, son.
Yeah, man. No, this is in defense of self-defense. So he
Mm,
got an essay called In Defense of Self-Defense. He got another one called Executive Mandate Number One.
hmm
And he draws a history of what he calls the implacable leaders
hmm
of Black America, from Nat Turner to Marcus Garvey to Malcolm X to the Black Panther Party,
Wow.
right? And so these links are not only articulated by him, but they're recognized by the FBI.
hmm
Right? So the importance of Garvey is, a lot of people talk about COINTELPRO and the Black Messiah,
hmm
right?
hmm
The FBI was headed by J. Edgar Hoover until he died. Going way back to Garvey's movement, the FBI was an organization called the General Intelligence Division.
hmm
Hoover was the top cop at the GID.
hmm
Okay. It was his mission to stomp out Garvey. And a quote from him is that Garvey was the Negro Moses.
mm
This is 1919.
mm
So these institutions have a memory that's deeper than ours.
Right.
You see what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
they
Right.
recognize this link, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Malcolm is literally the centerpiece.
Mm.
Not only is Malcolm's dad a Garveyite,
hmm
right? But Malcolm is the link to this new generation. After Garvey is departed, Black nationalism hits an all-time low.
Right.
Right, that's when you see the rise of Black communism, the Communist Party articulating internal colonialism theory a little bit, and the rise of the civil rights movement,
hmm
integration. There
hmm
is no basis of Black nationalism until Malcolm resuscitates it and takes it not only to the underclass, but to the Black middle class too.
Which is a powerful thing, class collaboration between,
Class collaboration, right?
yeah.
And this is what the party seen themselves doing.
hmm hmm
Remember, Huey and Bobby met at college.
Right. Right.
They
Right.
met at college. You see what
Right.
I'm saying?
hmm
Bobby's using his GI Bill,
Wow.
fresh out the Air Force,
Right.
right? But Huey is paying for tuition by gambling on the side.
Right.
You see what
Right.
I'm saying? So Huey is able to give talks at Yale and talk to pimps in Oakland. He ain't
Yeah.
got no problem mixing in.
Right.
That's Malcolm. That's that influence of Malcolm. I
Right.
mean, he said clearly, he said they founded the party in the spirit of Malcolm X. He's
Mm.
the spiritual father of the BPP.
Wow. Wow.
Right. So that link it's there, not
Mm.
only through them themselves, but the FBI realizes the link, right? Which is why they identify Huey Newton as the potential Black Messiah.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean?
And that's deep because whenever you show that link, it also it's a it's a, like as you mentioned and as Du Bois would probably mention, that it would be a spiritual link, but it's also an ideological flow that begins to it's like they don't necessarily have to have the same exact ideology as these theories begin to evolve, but there are certain basic principles that
Yeah.
are the same with all of those people that in that ideological link that we just named, right? And
I mean,
mhm,
look. When they started off as a separatist Black nationalist organization, you look at the first draft of the BPP 10-point program.
mhm,
Number 10 is for a UN plebiscite for Black people to vote on do they want to be U.S. citizens or do they want to have their own separate nation.
Wow. 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 That's black nationalism, bro.
That's black nationalism, right?
Yeah.
You talking about self-defense and self-determination?
Mm.
That's from Garvey on down,
Yep.
right? Like you said, basic ideological principles. Now everything else might be different, right?
Hmm.
Garvey hated the communists. He
Right.
felt like it was just white people splitting the pie amongst themselves.
Right. Right.
Right now,
Right.
by the time the Soviet Union becomes an empire, even Huey will tell you, he had a point.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? They might
Facts.
say socialism, but they imperialists too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah, like you said, man, those basic principles are there all the way through.
We often quote, Fred Hampton whenever he was talking about, theory without practice ain't shit, right? And we are going into, I feel like a we're going to a time, and it's probably, obviously meant for it to be this way, but we're going to a time where people aren't really aware of any type of political theory outside of being a Republican or a Democrat. Like, uh, how did we get there within Black thought?
Man, look, I mean, when you get to the end of Killology, you're gonna see this, man. But I really think that the emergence of U.S. empire is an obstacle for any type of praxis,
Mm.
right? Like if you think about these cell phones we have, how we can be tracked everywhere we go, there couldn't be an underground railroad if GPS was around.
Facts,
You
facts,
feel
right.
me?
Hmm.
If there was the same, if there was a juvenile justice act and the mass incarceration nation we have today, there couldn't be runaway slaves like there was.
Mm.
There can't be a subversive clandestine movement where the information environment is completely controlled by the enemy.
Right, right.
Your text messages, your social media, your settings on your phone. They don't even have to find out. You tell them what you like. You
Right,
tell them what type of movies you like on
right,
Facebook.
right,
Tell them if you're interested in men or women.
right,
You tell them that you're married. They
right.
used to have to send agents to follow
Mhm.
people to
And we
find this
give
stuff.
we give it up freely
They
every
give
day.
it up for them, man. Ain't gonna be no praxis if they could just Google you and find out everything about you. You feel me?
Facts,
This
facts.
is an obstacle for any type of real praxis.
Yeah, word,
You know what
word,
I
word.
mean?
And and that's what I strive with this show. I mean, because we're all, it's a lot of this stuff is heavy. A lot of this stuff is obviously these theories need to be studied. And so we can actually see what the people that came before us were actually getting at, just not the watered down version that we get shown in for public consumption, but these real and like we talk about engaging the work, right? And like a book like Revolutionary Suicide. I mean, that's a book. It's not for just like casual reading. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can if you want, and you will
Yeah,
still get something out of it.
for
But
sure.
to get, but to engage it, right, and begin to understand some of these theories, I think is important. And this is why it's always dope to have brothers like yourself on here, because you're extremely proficient in these ideas, and these are ideas that many people don't even know exist. And so, whenever we begin to talk about Huey's theory of intercommunalism, and how I wanted to ask, how did Dr. Huey's conceptualization of intercommunalism contribute, I guess, to a new understanding of the social geography of empire, right? And how did it differ from his earlier focus of national liberation, rooted in third worldism, which we just kind of got through building on a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So like intercommunalism is a product of black nationalism, right?
Mm, hmm.
He sees himself as sophisticating these ideas.
Hmm.
And you brought up revolutionary suicide. So intercommunalism has three phases: reactionary, revolutionary, and the final stage he calls the state of godhood or communism. But with those first two, those are the they're cognates to revolutionary and reactionary suicide.
Mm.
See, there's two types of suicide: it's
Mm-hmm.
reactionary and revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's two types of intercommunalism: reactionary,
Hmm.
revolutionary, right?
Right.
So these all depend on one another.
Mm.
Right? The consciousness of the average black male or the young niggas on the block, as he would say, the brothers on the block, is directly connected to the human possibility for freedom.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
So intercommunalism is gonna tell you that the United States has developed military and communications technology that's so vast, and they control the flow of ideas to such a degree, in control of power to such a degree that there are no more nations.
Mm.
Functionally, there can be no national liberation, not Vietnam, not
Mm-hmm.
China, nowhere,
Mm.
right? Because now there's one, even neocolonialism. He says Nkrumah was wrong.
Mm.
There are no neo-colonies.
Mm-hmm.
There's just reactionary intercommunalism in a global world that's controlled by the ruling class in North America.
Mm. Right.
And it seems subtle, but that's a huge leap,
Absolutely.
right?
That's
And
a
that
huge
starts
leap.
debates in the party.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's no national liberation, that means the entire framework of struggle from third worldism, from Guevara and the Cuban Revolution, that you got to rethink all of that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? You got to rethink all of this now.
Mm.
And so he
Wow.
thinks the way you get to from reactionary to revolutionary intercommunalism is revolutionary suicide on behalf of the black masses,
Mm.
because they are the tip of the spear within the North American empire,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
So, and then once this happens, once revolutionary suicide or revolutionary intercommunalism is accomplished, the dialectics and the change doesn't stop. He still thinks there's going to be contradictions,
Mm-hmm.
racism, misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionary intercommunalism is characterized by the masses of the people having the control of this big technology we're talking about,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Once
Mm.
we have, and we can project ourselves through the
Real power
technology,
to the people.
right?
Mm.
Right. And we'll sort these things out amongst ourselves and move toward a real universal idea of humanity.
Wow.
Once we get there, he thinks there's going to be a third leap
Mm-hmm.
where he says the state of communism, he calls it pure anarchy sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and he calls it communism or godhood. He says godhood because this technology is going to develop once more to where man will control all motion and matter.
Mm.
Just
Mm.
imagine
Mm.
all motion and matter
Mm-hmm.
at the snap of your fingers.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Huey was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant mind. He often doesn't, again, and it seems, well, I could be wrong, but mainstream academia, even when it comes to Black studies, it doesn't seem like he gets his proper due, his proper place in the pantheon of those that came before us that had these ideas of freedom, what freedom meant, how to achieve it. Um, it doesn't. It just seems like, oh, those are the dudes with guns,
Right.
not the intellectuals, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, is that something
Right.
that you notice?
Man, listen. I well, my dissertation started off as, just I was just gonna do a history of the thought of Huey Newton.
Mm,
I found one book,
wow, wow,
one, and it's really
wow.
good too,
What's
but
it
it's
called?
one. Uh, it's by Justin Jeffries. It's called I believe it's called The Thought of Huey P. Newton.
Okay, I'm definitely
Yeah,
on that now.
his
All
name's Justin
right,
Jeffries. Yeah, he's
all
a
right.
political scientist,
Hmm.
a brother, a
Hmm.
veteran too.
Dope, dope.
Cool guy. Yeah,
Hmm.
but that's the only one I could find. Right.
Wow.
And here's what I found doing my research. You want to know how Huey P. Newton is understood by Black scholars? 2007, right? So the first official history of the politics of the Black Panther Party was written in 2013 by former party members. They're at Berkeley now.
Hmm.
Now, In 2007, in the Black Scholar Journal,
Hmm.
by a Black scholar, Huey P. Newton was compared to Osama bin Laden.
What?
Yes, at the height of the global war on terrorism. His name is Robert Oden Smith. In the Black
Wow.
Scholar Journal.
In the Black
In the
Scholar
Black
Journal,
Scholar
not the
Journal.
alt-right scholar
No,
journal.
no, this it's a black scholar too. He's a black man. You can't blame him on nobody. It's a black man.
Wow.
The essay is titled "A Comparison of the Thought of Huey P. Newton and Osama bin Laden."
Wow.
Right?
That's
He
insane,
is
bro.
the archetype of the super predators that Hillary Clinton was talking about.
Mm,
He's the basis for how we understand those rapists and criminals.
wow.
Right? And in
Wow.
their minds, he learned all this philosophy to just justify thievery,
Right. Right.
violence.
Right. Right.
He's no intellect.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, there was a book written on him in '95
Hmm.
by a journalist, a
Hmm.
black journalist, another Ivy League guy. He says Huey P. Newton didn't even earn he didn't even earn that PhD. It was given to him.
What?
Yeah, it's given to him. He didn't deserve that, and his PhD thesis didn't really pass muster, but they just gave it to him anyway. Right?
Nah,
He's
that's
just not
crazy.
recognized. Yeah, his intellect is flat out denied.
Wow, that's crazy. And just to think, whenever you were doing research on the thought of and the evolution of his thought, or just a chronology of his thought, and obviously you go to look for books on this, and there's one. That's
There's
that's
one, man.
that's crazy.
There's one, man.
That's
And
crazy.
look, and it's what's worse. There was a book, or not a book, an article written.
Hmm.
I want to say 2 years ago. Um, and even when they do talk about him,
Hmm.
it's on revolutionary suicide, right?
Hmm.
And he says, yeah, Huey got intercommunalism from Mao Zedong.
Really?
Yeah, a black philosopher said that. Yeah, right. So even
Wow.
when it's acknowledged,
Hmm.
he's assumed to be mimicking somebody
So that's
else.
somebody else, right?
And he doesn't have any original ideas,
Right.
right?
Right.
He's
Right.
not like black men in America just not given that type of capacity to be thinkers.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, that's crazy. And another brilliant person who's still with us. Me on the phone, we were kind of building on his brilliance. Daruba bin Wahad. And
word.
you know, if you can, if you can go through and tell the people what his theory of national security state like is, and if you can break that down.
Yeah, man. So, the national security state is what Deruba says is like, he calls it the highest stage of democratic fascism.
Mm,
And he sees himself as describing a lot of the same things Huey is describing. He doesn't make that leap to where there's no nations anymore.
mhm,
But what Deruba want to say is that in response to the contradictions of that capitalist social structure created, that unrest,
mhm,
the national security state was configured by a corporate ruling class to do two things. It not only imposes racist violence through policing at home or domestic war through the criminal justice system, but it also wars against an insurgent and rebellious third world at the same time through
mm,
counterinsurgency,
right, right,
right? And the basic fulcrum of this structure is a military police apparatus and cutting edge prison and military technology.
mm,
That's where him and Huey converge, right?
mhm, mhm,
Both point you toward this leap in American technological capacity
mm,
when it comes to communications and military might, right? And I mean, look, he's articulating this in a book called Still Black, Still Strong, published in 1993.
mhm,
He'll tell you that the national security state is so fixated on maintaining the status quo that it will even attack its own citizens,
mm,
right? This is before 9/11 and the
mhm,
Patriot. This
mhm,
man sitting in solitary confinement telling you this gonna happen,
right,
right?
damn,
And then there it is.
right,
And it's just it's uncanny
mhm,
the way he's able to describe how this happens, right? There's
mhm,
a racist domestic war at home, right? And then there's what they call low intensity wars or small wars or counterinsurgency wars abroad, and they're simultaneous. They influence each other, they inform each other, and they're all managed by the same ruling class of North America.
Right. As somebody who and speaking of you, as somebody who um uh their study part of their study was anti-colonial theory and philosophy. Is that why you also studied AI technology and how that fit in?
Right,
Mm.
right. And you know, I really was influenced to do that by Huey, man.
Hmm.
Um, but Huey's dead by 89,
Hmm.
right? So he doesn't get to see the revolution in mass-based computer systems and artificial intelligence technology and surveillance systems that happens post 9/11.
Hmm. Hmm.
He doesn't live to see that revolution in unmanned aircraft vehicles or land-based drones or the move or the data revolution that happens in Afghanistan in 2004. He doesn't get to see that.
Mm.
You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that yeah, and that's a lot, right? Because like, you can there's already documentaries and articles being written about uh the 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 racism and being programmed into some of this AI technology.
But look, this is the
Mhm,
brilliance of a Huey
mhm,
Newton or Ben Wahad, right?
mhm.
If you look up, there's a book called Surveillance Valley by
Mhm.
Yeshua Levine. He's
Okay.
a journalist, but he
Mhm,
got a bunch of classified documents. Did history on the on the history of the internet.
mhm,
The brilliance of these brothers is that AI literally comes from counterinsurgency.
mm,
Computing technologies were pioneered to predict social upheaval.
wow.
All these, this is what we was talking about,
Mhm,
information.
mhm,
Well, the ruling class said, listen, let's not wait for another revolution to pop off.
mhm.
If we can get the data metrics on these types of people, we can isolate them ahead of time.
We can predict a natural disaster.
We can predict it. This is all
Right.
computing is
Mhm,
sorting information,
mhm,
right? And they're using the U.S. Army to do this. In Vietnam, as the pioneer
mm,
for what is a program called DARPA that
mhm,
eventually becomes what we now know as the internet
mm,
to
mm,
predict revolution in a counterinsurgency war.
mm.
Right? Like these, but they telling you this happening in real time. They don't have the language.
Mhm,
They don't
mhm.
see where it develops, but they're telling you this is what happened.
Wow. I mean, that's again, that just goes to show their brilliance and
Sure, man.
um and it's that's heavy, because it's a like we said before, it's a brilliantly wicked system and diabolical system. Whenever you under, 'cause I often talk about it as as I learn more personally, and you learn the depths of this wickedness, and it's like, bruh, like this is cold. It's a cold game, I kind of mentioned it before when I mentioned with Garvey, but I wanted to know what your thoughts on some leftists, because we are obviously talking about people who have occupied, people like Huey and the Panthers who have occupied socialist spaces. Um, but there's I think a resurgence in a lot of people that, not saying that the Panthers thought this way, but there's a resurgence in the idea with a lot of leftists who views seeing race in the context of liberation as nothing more than engaging in identity politics, arguing that class should be the sole focus of our concerns. As a black man, we obviously have an experience that we know as I mean, we are racialized, right?
Sure, right.
So how can one ignore um, race, and how can race be reduced to identity politics when a lot of this caste system that we have within America is based on race?
Yeah, I mean, like we were just talking about Daruba's NSS. You
Hmm.
can't understand it without race. You can't
Hmm.
understand American
Hmm.
imperialism
Hmm.
without
Hmm.
race. I think people who are saying that, particularly tying it to identity politics, they just don't know what that term means and where it actually comes from.
Right, because what's it, and I started seeing it, not to cut you off, but I started seeing it
Yeah.
when Dr. Cordell West started his campaign,
Mhm.
and uh, he was popped up in the beginning in a lot of leftist circles. Then he began to start speaking about race as well as class, and then when he began
Mhm.
to speak about race, he was accused of engaging in identity politics.
Right, right,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that shows you the ignorance of these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, clearly class is important. We was just talking about internal colonialism. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like clearly it's important, but it's not an either or question.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, identity politics was a term created in 1979 by the Combahee River Collective.
Mm.
That's where that comes from.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's a black feminist term.
I
Uh,
wow.
yeah,
I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah. That was created by the Combahee River Collective. That's not just a term that just is a general term to apply to
Yeah.
all things. Yeah, the struggle for racial justice and black liberation. Which what BLM used to mean, Black Liberation Movement.
Right. Right. Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Right.
not
Right.
identity politics.
Right.
That's
Right.
self determination of a people.
Facts. And
You know what I
that's
mean?
and that's something that our people we have. Man, it's like I mean, from the time of slavery to colonialism in Africa to the prison industrial complex to now, like that's one thing we haven't had as a people. We haven't
No,
had that agency
no,
where we can direct our, like, and when we start thinking about colonialism, we start thinking about the idea of decolonialism.
right.
What's your idea? What do you think about, I mean, as far as how much of that involves the decolonization of our mind?
Man, I think that's where we start. Look,
Yeah.
man, if you can't think it, you damn sure can't do it.
Facts.
You
Right.
feel
Right.
me?
Right.
If
Right.
it's beyond the realm of reason and ideas, how do you materialize something like that?
Right, right, right,
You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, absolutely, man. Last thing I wanted to ask you, and again, I definitely appreciate you for coming on, bro. It's always a great time to build with you.
Likewise.
Um, Many black radicals, back then, during that time, and now, did not find much redeeming value in Booker T. Washington,
Mm,
criticizing his dependence on white philanthropic money and his advocacy of the Hampton Tuskegee model of industrial education. And for those that don't know, that industrial education was an idea that we're only going to be taught how to work menial jobs, work the fields. And this begins in 1868, uh, 3 years after emancipation, right? Another a way to keep us, uh, I guess, in that position in the social hierarchy of human beings in America, and the the idea, so and he had pushback from everybody from Ida B. Wells to Du Bois to Trotter to
sure. Yeah.
and so um so a lot of you know black thinkers then and now, again, like I said, they don't find a lot of redeeming value in Booker T. Washington, right? But I came across an article by John Hope Franklin that discussed Washington's behind the scenes efforts, which apparently contradicted a lot of the things that he would say publicly, right?
Right. Right.
um,
Right.
and like because even Du Bois kind of criticized them for buck dancing in front of white folks and telling darky jokes and all of that kind of thing. But like as John Hope Franklin was saying, there were things that were being done behind, like it was like for him, like it seems like that was an act, right? Like just keep giving me your money, you know what I'm saying, type of
Right.
thing.
Right.
But whenever you whenever you perceive the legacy of Booker T. Washington, like what would you say? What comes to your mind then?
Ah man, I think Booker T. Washington is an enigmatic figure.
Hmm.
Very hard to understand because, as you said, like historians found out after he died that the same things that he was criticizing Du Bois for, he was actually covertly funding, right,
Facts.
in
Hmm.
advance, right. So a lot of it, we talked about it personally, man. Like Washington was a race man,
Yeah.
right? You read Up from Slavery. This is a
Yeah.
race man, right?
Facts.
This
Mm.
man walked to Hampton.
From West
You imagine
Virginia.
that?
Right. Right.
Walking to Hampton
Right.
just to
Right.
get there, and they don't even let you in. He said, "Oh, I'll just give me a broom. I'll work
Hmm.
until you let me in."
Yep.
Right? This is a race man, right?
Hmm.
The interesting part about him is that, and this is another like kind of contradictory feature of him. People know about his spat with Du Bois, but people forget that it was Bishop Henry Turner who he killed first,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? With the Atlanta Compromise speech,
Absolutely.
right? He's the one who put the nail in the coffin of immigrationism and back to Africa before Garvey
Right.
by saying, cast your buckets down where you are.
Right.
But at the same time, it was Booker T. Washington who Garvey said wrote him a letter and told him, come to America and start the UNIA.
Facts.
Right?
Facts.
This is the same figure.
Facts. And
Yeah,
and and
man.
it's and that's and I'm glad you mentioned that because when Garvey was in London before he came here, he read Up from Slavery and was totally inspired, man. Like
Yeah.
the same way, there's always when we have these great leaders and these great movements, and the leaders of these movements are always inspired by uh, uh, you know, you can always find some works that kind of catapulted them into an ideological paradigm, whether it's Black nationalism, whether or whatever, right? But just for Garvey to, to say, yo, this is the book that kind of, what I'm saying, like
I
help
mean,
me.
don't they seem like polar opposites?
They do, they
Right?
do,
But it's
they do.
not, they're not.
Right.
They're not, right? And
Right.
and both of these men, Garvey and Washington, end up being ideological rivals of who? Du Bois,
The voice. Yeah.
right? Who eventually uses both of their ideas after both of them are gone and spearheads the development of what we know now as Pan-Africanism
Facts.
and this vision of a unified Africa and
Mm.
the UNA,
You and
not
I.
UNIA, but
Mm.
the OAU, the
Hmm.
Organization of African
African
Unity,
unity.
started
Hmm.
by Nkrumah.
Hmm.
And Nkrumah said himself the father of Pan Africanism was Du Bois and George Patmore.
Mm. Facts.
And Du Bois would tell you himself. And I thought Washington didn't have a point, but he was right. We do need some type of autonomy and self sufficiency.
Mm.
Right. I
Mm.
thought Garvey, I thought he was being idealistic,
Hmm.
talking about a unified Africa. We do need regional confederations.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
But, like you said, his peers, Ida B. Wells, Anna Julia Cooper,
Hmm.
right? I mean, there's really no way for them to know this
Yeah. Yeah.
about him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even the white people he taking the money from they
They
don't
don't
know.
know. Oh, they definitely don't know.
They don't know this dude is funding the same things he's talking about, right? And like I said,
Yeah.
he put the nail in immigrationism through Turner.
Mm.
But Garvey created the biggest Black nationalist movement of the 1900s.
Right. Right.
And that's a direct credit to Booker T. Washington. So
Facts.
the same man, right? Remember,
Mm.
Garvey's not able to come to America and talk to the black masses about immigration because it's a new idea.
Hmm.
The black masses have been thinking about going back to Africa since at least the 1820s.
Hmm.
Right? This is in the common consciousness already.
Yeah.
Right? It's only till the 1890s when, Bishop Turner he's out of here with the Atlanta Compromise.
Right. Right.
Right? But that same person who got him up out of here is the link for the biggest Black nationalist movement of that century.
And that's cold. And for people who don't know Bishop Henry McNeill Turner, I mean, he was a prominent figure on the scene, head of the AME Church and everything. And
Sure.
so, like, this stuff that's happening is like these are like real powerhouses having these ideological differences, but are, you know, again, like you said, it's
Are the same
historianship.
tradition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely, man.
man.
And but before we go though, do you think that, because for a long time in my life, right, when I would read these things, especially when I was a lot younger, it was always framed as a versus type of thing, or this history is happening in a vacuum, instead of uh the connectedness of, like how we just talked about Huey, right?
Right.
uh you know, and the ideological link that linked them all, or we see, you know, Garvey and Du Bois, or Du Bois and Washington in a versus manner, right? Like,
Mm.
do you think that, I don't know, it's just like, you know, it took a while for me to begin to see things in a way where it's like, yo, it's not, this is not, that's kind of European, in my opinion, to see it
Yeah.
in that manner, where this is, we're like, and a lot of the, you know, a lot of this, you know, some of these people were like Booker T. Washington himself was born into slavery, right? We are going through a time where we are attempting to develop ideas for our own liberation. Of course, you're going to have ideological differences, right? But
Right. Right.
we're all looking obviously towards the same thing, which is, you know, agency and the freedom, because at, you know, we still to this day don't really, like Asada said, we don't, you know, whenever they asked her what freedom was, she's like, I can tell you what it ain't, you know what I'm saying, but I've
Right.
never really
Right.
experienced what it is. And so, like, whenever we see, I just think, you know, I just mentioned that because I feel like everybody that's watching, I just, you know, who they, you may already view it that way, but I just always like to kind of bring that up, because I don't like the idea that our history a lot of times is taught in a vacuum, whereas these incidents are just
Mm.
isolated from this over here. No, whenever you can see the connectedness of it all, I think it gives us a more powerful view of our past.
No, I agree with you, man. I think it's a lot of false dichotomies.
Hmm.
It's really presented this person against that person,
Hmm.
this or that, this or
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
You know, you see it even with the Black cultural nationalists and the Black Panther Party, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
talked about you know, Baraka going to Marxism, Leninism.
Hmm.
Most of the people who tell you about the Black Panther Party never tell you that Baraka eventually agreed with intercommunalism,
Hmm. Right, right,
right? And
right.
even amongst themselves, man, when you look at the content of the ideas, they're not that different,
Hmm.
right? The
Hmm.
Black Panther Party they do believe we talked about that. They were a black separatist group. They
Right,
believe white people have a unique culture.
right.
They the first revolutionary black group from America to have a chapter in revolutionary Algeria in Africa.
Mm,
You
right,
think they anti-African?
right, right, right,
Right?
right,
They don't they're not completely opposites.
right,
But like you
right.
said, there are ideological differences, but we don't have a real grasp on the ideas,
Mm,
trajectory and genealogy of ideas.
mhm. And the chronology of them.
Right.
Hmm.
In the black diaspora in North America. You
Hmm.
know, I think a
Hmm.
lot of that is related to the dereliction of black philosophers.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't want to study these things,
right.
right? It's the role of a philosopher to clarify a history and intellectual genealogy of ideas.
Absolutely.
They don't see themselves as doing that. They want
Mm.
to clarify European traditions,
Hmm. Mm.
right?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
and I
that's.
mean, speaking of it, I want to give my man Jeffries his credit. His
Hmm.
book is titled Huey P. Newton, the Radical Theorist.
Okay, bet. I'm definitely gonna cop that. I'm gonna cop
It's
that
really
today.
good, man.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's amazing, man. Dr. Miron Gilmore, my brother. You know, it's like whether it's public or private, man, it's always dope to have these conversations, man. I just want to let you know that, you know, and I feel like I can speak for the community in this aspect, man. We appreciate what you do. We appreciate the story. We appreciate everything that it took for you to even get where you are, man. And so, you know, we salute you, my brother.
Hey, man, I salute back, man. I'm humbled by that, brother.
No doubt, man. Well, peace, bro, and until the next time.
All right, peace.
Peace.